Friday, guys, we talked about Hobbes and Locke. We talked about social contract theories. Okay. What is the social contract theory? It is an agreement between the people and the government. Okay. So that's what we did with the Constitution, guys, is we created a Constitution. It was an agreement between the people and the government. Right. Now, when you form a government, there are 5 functions of the government. How many? 5 functions of government. Okay. So we're going to go through these and kind of explain, guys, thinking about government for a lot of people is something they haven't done before. So just getting kind of a grasp is why do we have government? Okay. And kind of breaking that down a little bit. So starting with number 1, maintaining order. Obviously, guys, this is kind of self-explanatory when you talk about like a cop on his beat, where they're patrolling, making sure that there's security, safety, that sort of thing. Same thing with the soldier on a tour of duty. Okay, but also maintaining order in society, like when it comes to business practices, discrimination and hiring. So remember we talked about affirmative action. Okay, where you try and promote or help minorities that have been discriminated against. Well, certainly, guys, if an employer is not hiring people based on their race or their gender or something like that, you got a problem. Okay. Another one is this. A lot of people don't think about this. Protecting national industries. Let me ask you a question. Any of you guys taken ibuprofen in the last 6 months? Okay. Do you know where the vast majority of ibuprofen on this planet is produced? It's produced in China. Okay, so the vast majority of where we get ibuprofen comes from China. That could also be said for a lot of prescription drugs that are manufactured in China. Yo, Smarsh, what are we doing? Everything okay? Yeah. Okay. So listen, if we got into a conflict with China, okay, do we want them to have control of the supply chain to make all of these prescription drugs and ibuprofen and so forth? You guys following me on that? That is kind of a national security type issue, guys. You remember this when COVID was going on, we had all these supply chain issues. Yes, to get stuff in from overseas. Right now, we're going to start seeing an uptick of that because of what's going on in the Red Sea. The Houthis in Yemen are firing on civilian cargo ships. Okay, and so cargo ships are having to reroute all the way around the Horn of Africa, okay, to ship internationally, which is going to slow it down and make products more expensive. So our national industries, our government kind of has to take a look at some of this stuff and make sure that we have what we need in this country. Okay, so it's kind of a vital role. All right. So look at number 2 here. Providing services. Now, guys, the Constitution doesn't have a bunch of stuff like the government is supposed to provide welfare, the government's supposed to provide health care, the government's supposed to do this and this for the people. It doesn't do that. It does say that the government can build post offices and postal roads. So if we have a post office and we need to build a road to get mail from one post office to another post office, the government has the authority to do that. Now, is it easy for you and I to go out and build a road? A highway? No. So we pull together our tax dollars, okay, and the government takes that money and hires people to do just that, build roads, bridges, things that we can't easily do ourselves. Does that make sense? We kind of do that with education too, like with public schools. So the government takes in the tax dollars, we build buildings, the government builds school buildings. There's land set aside for that, okay? The land that Wilbur sits on, the land that Northwest sits on was all set aside a long time ago just for education, to build schools, okay? So these are things that we can't easily do ourselves. Does that make sense? Okay. Does that mean we need government to do everything for us? No. Okay. Here's another interesting one. Inspecting food. You guys have heard of like salmonella. Okay. There's some other types of bacteria that sometimes get into our foods, and they'll do like a recall. You ever hear about this? Like a recall of some food? Okay, like sometimes it's lettuce, or sometimes it's ice cream. I forget the name of that bacteria that gets into the ice cream. Anybody know what that is? It's a dairy thing, and so yeah, I mean, you eat it, you could die. Okay, so do we want the food producers to inspect their own food, or do we want an outside group to do that? We want to make sure the food we're buying at the grocery store is safe for consumption. Yes? So we have this thing called the Food and Drug Administration. Any of you guys work at a restaurant? Ever worked at a restaurant? Okay. Would you eat at the restaurant that you used to work at? You've seen the behind the scenes? Is that what you're saying? Like, okay, after class, you can tell me what that is so I don't go eat there. Okay. Listen, they do inspections of restaurants, right? To make sure where they're preparing food is clean and sanitary. You following me? Okay. You don't want freaking, at Brahms over here, you don't want cockroaches and rats infesting the kitchen where they're preparing food. You know what I mean? So they do these inspections, and then they publish their findings in the newspaper. You guys aware of this? Okay. Do we want the restaurant industry policing themselves, or do we want an outside group to look at the food packing industry, the agriculture industry, to make sure that what we're eating is safe? That's why we have the USDA. That's why we have the Food and Drug Administration. Okay. Things that we can't easily do ourselves, or we don't want people doing themselves. We want an outside group to look at. Does that make sense? Okay. So listen, guys. Mr. Ebright likes to rail against government. So a lot of times when you're here talking, he's like, Mr. Ebright must be some type of anarchist that doesn't believe in government. No. I know there's a need for government. But what I don't like is ignorant government. Government that's inefficient, that's ineffective, and overbearing. Okay? So, guys, there's a need for some of this stuff. All right? And some of the services. Now, what about on roads? I have an idea. Ready? We have $34 trillion in debt, right? As a nation. One way to pay that off is if we sold all the roads and highways to private individuals or private businesses. Okay? And every time you use that road, you pay a toll. So if you don't drive, you don't use the roads, you don't pay for the road. If you use the roads a lot, you pay for it. So every time you get on Central, okay, there's a barcode on your car, there's a barcode scanner, and every time you get on Central, boom, 2 cents. You gotta pay 2 cents. Okay? Get back on Central when you leave here, that's 2 more cents. You paid 4 cents that day. Now, how many people use Central all day? Well, there's cars driving up and down it right now. Yes? So whoever owns that road gets that money, and they maintain that road. And if they want to attract drivers on those roads, they keep them up, good upkeep of those roads. If they try to charge you 10 cents every time, well, I'm just going to hop on Maple instead of Central. And you're not getting my money. Now, you take all the money for the sales of the roads, and you pay down the national debt. 34 trillion. Okay? The road needs to be repaired. That's up to the business that owns the road. Okay? You don't like the way they're managing that road? You don't use it. It's called privatization of roads. Do you guys know that in most parts of the country that trash collection used to be done by the government? And then they privatized it. And they said, we're going to let private companies do trash collection. So if you've got 3 trash companies wanting to get houses to sign up to take their trash, you got competition. Okay. Now, most people use waste management. Okay. But there are other options. If you don't like waste management, you can get your trash picked up by a different company. Did you know that? So the lower the price, you get more customers, competition. So if you own the roads, competition. So you want to build stuff on your roads that's going to attract drivers. That's smart. You want to have good roads that's going to attract drivers. Privatize the system instead of the government doing it. This is the argument I'm having with myself right now over this issue. What do you guys think? Think that's a good idea? It's a good way to pay down the national debt. Now, neighborhoods would have to be kind of a collective type thing where, you know how you pay dues? And you guys live in a neighborhood where you have dues for to mow the grass and the pool and stuff like that. Okay. So it would be the neighborhood that would do the upkeep of the road. So if it needed to be patched, the neighborhood would do a special collection. Hey, we got to fix this pothole. Okay, you might even be able to do it yourself. You got some hard-working people in your neighborhood. Well, we're not going to pay for that. We'll fix it ourselves. Who likes my idea? You don't want to pay a toll every time you get on the road? Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Like I'm just like having a conversation with a wall. Yes. No, I don't. You don't like the idea, Troy?
No, I do DoorDash, bro.
Okay.
That's extra.
Well, bro, you're gonna have to charge more. Right? DoorDash is gonna have to charge more. Now, emergency vehicles, police and emergency vehicles, they don't have to pay. Or we could make them pay, but you don't want emergency vehicles to avoid roads because they have to pay. All right. We'll just move on to number 3 then. And 4 and 5. Okay. Number 3, resolving conflict. Okay. This is a really important part of government. Okay. We have states and local governments and national government. What if, the Arkansas River? You know that river? What if before the water in Arkansas River reaches us, Nebraska takes all the water and uses it for their farms, and they leave us like a little stream of water coming through Arkansas from the Arkansas River? We're going to sue Nebraska. Okay? Who's going to be the judge? The federal courts will play referee. Okay? Now, talk about resolving conflict. You guys, I don't know if you guys know what's going on at the border right now, but it's kind of crazy what's going on. Okay, so as you guys know, I think I told you, like 8 million people have come across the border in the last 3 years, okay, which is by far a huge record, okay. In 1 year, under Trump, you got that many people coming as we're getting in a month under Biden, okay. Texas is done. They're like, you know what? The U.S. government's not doing their job. This is an invasion. It's a literal invasion. Okay? So the Texas National Guard has taken over part of the border and kicked the Border Patrol out. They put up razor wire and big, like, shipping containers as a wall with razor wire on it. And in the Rio Grande, they've put out these buoys with razor wire on it. Now, the Supreme Court told the Border Patrol, federal government, they said, you can cut down that razor wire that Texas is putting up. They haven't done that yet. But Texas said if the Border Patrol tries to cut down our wire, we're going to just put up new wire. So you've got the federal government and you got the state of Texas. Now, thus far, the Border Patrol is thankful for the Texas National Guard. They're like, thank you. We need help down here. We're being overrun. We got too many people. Okay? We have to see how this plays out, guys. Okay? The courts are going to have a say. The Constitution says it. Whose job is it to secure the border? The states or the national government? Whose job is it? The border. The national government's job. Okay? But the Constitution also says that the national government has to protect states in case of an invasion. Like literally say Canada or Mexico invaded the United States. The federal government would have to defend the states. So Texas is saying there's an invasion and you're not stopping it. So we're going to stop it. You guys following that? So who's right? We have the court system for it. Okay? And that's why we have elections. So you can determine who's right. Okay? Politics and compromise, guys, in the United States Senate, they're talking about a border bill. They're talking about trying to fix this. Okay? In the Senate. Now, the Democrats control the Senate. And so you may get 60 votes for that. You Republicans go along, Mitt Romney go along, and some others. Okay? But over in the House, the Republicans control that. And they've already said that bill you're working on in the Senate is DOA when you bring it over to the House. It's DOA. Dead on arrival. That bill is not going to pass the House. Okay? This week in the United States House of Representatives, the Secretary of Homeland Security, his name is Alexander Mayorkas, is going to be impeached by the House of Representatives this week for dereliction of duty and lying under oath to Congress. The Republicans are going after the Secretary of Homeland Security for not doing his job. Now, the reason he's not doing his job is because of his boss. And who's his boss? Joe Biden. Okay, so immediately upon taking office on January 21st, 2021, okay, Biden overturned all of Trump's executive orders controlling the border. The stay in Mexico. So if you come to our border seeking asylum, you stay in Mexico until a judge hears your case. And then if you're granted asylum, you're allowed to come into the country. If you're not granted asylum, you stay in Mexico or go back to where you came from. Biden did away with that. Biden could reinstitute that today, and it would solve the border crisis. But he's choosing to blame Republicans, okay? So it becomes that political football back and forth between the Republicans and Democrats. Been fighting over this issue for 50 years, and they both like it. Democrats want to say that Republicans don't like brown people, okay? And Republicans want to say Democrats, all they care about is an open border, and they're trying to get new voters in here so that they can stay in power. We're going to let all these people in, we're going to give them citizenship, and we're going to let them vote, okay? And they'll vote for us, the Democrats. Okay? So what's going on? Somewhere in between, some of that, okay? The fourth function of government is promoting values. What is a value? Basic principles by which people act and live. Now remember, I told you guys, you can't legislate morality or values, but you can promote it through your laws. Okay? So what are some of the principles that we try and promote as a government? Equality of opportunity. That kind of goes back to that affirmative action type thing. Make sure that there's not discrimination. make sure that the schools are good so that kids that grow up in poverty have a way out of poverty, giving them opportunities, individual rights, that the government protects these individual rights. So when you own a bakery, okay, you own a bakery, and a gay couple comes into your bakery and says, hey, we're getting married, will you make us a wedding cake? And you're like, you know what? I'll sell you a cake. If you want to decorate it yourself, you can, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not comfortable. It doesn't really jive with my religion. I'll sell you cookies. I'll sell you whatever you want, but I'm not going to decorate a cake for you. If you want to go somewhere else, you can. Or you can decorate yourself. I'll make you a cake. Now, that has happened in a couple states. Happened in Colorado, happened in Oregon, and the state of Oregon and the state of Colorado went after the bakery, saying that they were discriminating against, see this, discriminating against the gay couple. But they were doing so on religious grounds. So what trumps First Amendment, freedom of religion, or discrimination laws in Colorado and Oregon? Who wins? You know what wins? The Constitution wins. The Bill of Rights wins. Your freedom of religion wins. Okay? That is your individual right. Are you following me? So if those rights come from God, remember when we had this conversation? Those rights come from God, they can't be taken away. Those rights come from man, they can be taken away. Thus far, the Supreme Court has been pretty darn good about holding up our free speech, our freedom of religion, our right to bear arms, no illegal search and seizure, trial by jury, all these things that are our individual rights. The Supreme Court's done a pretty good job of defending them for us. Okay? Now, if they don't protect our individual liberties, we have the right to do what? Yeah. We have the right to overthrow the government because that's tyranny. They don't defend your God-given rights. Okay? So, what else do I have? Education. Okay? Guys, this is a value we promote in this country. We give free education from kindergarten through high school. Okay? That's a value we have in this country. We were the first industrialized nation in the world to go free K through 12 education in this country in the 1920s. We went free for everybody. Okay? So that's a value that our government promotes. Okay? Safety-ness, willing to compromise, these sorts of things. These are values that we try to have in this country. Okay? So they pass laws and set policies to reinforce them. Now, the old textbook that we had did not have number 5. Okay? The old government book. They added this one after 9/11. And this brings up some pretty interesting things going on right now. To ensure national security is a function of government. Well, we know about the border, right? What is that drug that keeps getting through that is killing more people between 18 and 45 than any other thing killing people between 18 and 45? And what is that? Fentanyl. Now, where do the components, the ingredients for fentanyl come from? Who is creating these chemicals, these components? China is. And China is shipping these components, these ingredients, to Mexico. And who is making those ingredients into fentanyl-laced pills? Cartels in Mexico. And who is smuggling these across? The cartels. And who are they using to smuggle? U.S. citizens oftentimes are helping the cartels smuggle not just drugs, but people. Okay, if you live in Texas, you talk to the right people, okay, they're going to get you on a text message, the cartel, and they're going to pay you to pick up migrants in certain places. They get across the border and say, you're going to pick these people up. It's like an Uber or Uber Eats. You pick these people up, we'll pay you if you drive them to this location. You have young people your age that are doing this in Texas. Okay, getting paid by the cartels to humanly traffic people. Human traffic people. Okay, and drugs. Now, so, guys, fentanyl is not overdosing. Fentanyl is poisoning. You understand? More than 100,000 people last year, guys. That's poisoning. 100,000 people. How many people died in the Vietnam War? How many Americans died in the Vietnam War? Just over 50,000. Korean War, less than 50,000. The Gulf War, the Afghan War, and the Iraq War combined, less than 50,000, less than 20,000. This is 100,000 Americans a year dying by taking the wrong freaking pill that's laced with poison. What are we doing about it? Where's the urgency? It's doubled since Biden's been in office, the number of people that have died. Why is the media not talking about this? Did the media talk about the Vietnam War? Oh, you better believe they did. Wall-to-wall coverage of it. You don't get hardly any coverage of this by the media. And who's dying? Young people, middle class people are dying. Okay? It's freaking crazy. What are we doing about it? This is a national security issue. Cyber attacks. Now, how many of you guys heard about what happened in the country of Jordan this weekend to American troops in Jordan this weekend? 3 Americans were killed, 3 American servicemen, and 25 were injured by a suicide drone in the country of Jordan. None of you heard about this? Listen, you guys are 17, you're 18, you're in a U.S. government class. Okay? I'm talking to a wall. You guys have it right here. You know, people in North Korea would die to find out the truth about the world around them, just to know the truth, to have the access to information that wasn't given to them by their government. You have this. Download some freaking apps on your phone, go on Instagram, and follow some news organizations on Instagram, and they will show up in your feed. How many of you guys are on Instagram? Follow some freaking news organizations. I don't care which one. CNN, Fox News, I don't care. Okay? Breitbart, Vox, I don't care. Okay, left to right, I don't care. Just get some freaking news. You're on TikTok? I don't know how TikTok works. Never been on it. I'm not going on it. But do you like follow people on it? Do you like follow things? I'm sure there's some news organizations on TikTok. Follow them. They'll come across your feed. You see the headline. Okay? If you read the headlines, you're kind of informed. And you're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder what happened. Then you click on it and find out what happened. Follow me? Since October, American troops in Iraq, Syria, and now Jordan have been attacked 170 times. Almost all of these attacks are taken part by Iran proxies. These are terrorist groups that Iran supports. So this weekend, 3 Americans were killed by this drone, 25 wounded. You had 2 senators, Republican senators, that are former military guys, that has called on Biden to strike at Iran, to hit their capital, to make them pay. This has happened 170 times since October. What are we doing about it? Guys, if you can smuggle people into Mexico, okay, The number of Chinese nationals that have shown up at our border in the last 3 years is triple of what we've had in previous years. These are all young men. Now, are they just coming here for a better life, or are they being sent here? There are people coming from Russia. There are people coming from China. There are people coming from countries that are enemies of the United States showing up at our borders. We don't know who they are. We don't know why they're here. And we're letting them into the country. More than 300 that are on the terrorist watch list have been caught at the border. How many have escaped into the border? These are your gotaways. Okay? So if you can get human beings into Mexico, can you get suicide drones into Mexico? Do you have a way to shoot one down in your yard? At your house? You got a way to shoot down a suicide drone? Does our country? Can we defend ourselves against this? Now, Israel does. Israel and our military does, but not here. Not in Texas, not in Florida, not in Kansas. The White House has it, air defense systems. But how are you going to shoot down a drone? How are we going to shoot down these drones if they start? Guys, if we attack Iran, like blow up some of their oil refineries, which is what some think we should do, make them pay. Hit them where it hurts. Hit them in the wallet. Okay? And they unleash terrorism in this country? What's the first thing you're going to go after if you're attacking the United States from within? Going after the power grid, guys. You guys know where the power grid is, where your neighborhood is? Drive around your neighborhood, you see that fenced off area with the, yeah, okay. Are those protected? Or like, do we have security around those? You know how easy it would be to disrupt the United States? It's scary. How much food do you have? How long can you survive at your house without going to the store? How much water do you have? You ever thought about this? They go after the power grid, guys. You don't have any electricity. Your refrigerator doesn't run. Your freezer doesn't run. Okay? And so all that food spoils. One thing you probably need to do if you think it's going to happen is fill up your bathtubs with water so you have fresh water. It's the first thing you do. Fill up that bathtub. Because if the water stops running or they contaminate the water sources, which is easy to do as well. Okay? Are you ready for this? We don't know who these people are that they've let into the country, guys. Okay? And like I said, guys, this is not I'm not trying to be xenophobic. I'm not talking about Mexicans here. You understand? I'm not talking about Mexicans. Mexicans don't want to come in here and hurt America. Okay? But there are other people around the world that do. Okay? So, cyber, so hacking you can hack our power grid. It's been done. The Russians can do this. The Chinese can do it. The North Koreans can do it. Hack our grid, our GPS system, our satellites. A lot of you people would be lost without your GPS. You know what I'm talking to, okay? Ports of entry, missile air. So these are things that, we rely on the president, the Homeland Security, Defense Secretary, to make sure that these things we're doing a good job here. Okay? And, listen, this is what I'm just talking about, guys. You got to pay attention. You guys can be eligible to vote this November. You paying attention. Okay? So, Twitter, follow some news organizations, download a couple news apps, pull them up. Have them come across your feed. Pay attention, okay? A lot of stuff going on right now. This thing in Texas at the border with the national, it's interesting. It's like, who's right, who's wrong? There's a lot of implications for this stuff. So, these are kind of the 5 major functions of government, right? We need it, and we want it to be efficient, we want it to be effective, and pay its bills. How do we do it? How's our government doing? Some things it's doing all right, some things it's not, you know? But if you don't pay attention, you really don't know. So what I'm trying to do, guys, is give you the tools to look at the news and understand it. Okay? Understand it and be able to decipher when the news is telling you BS when it's not. Okay? Because if you trust what you hear on the news all the time, you're a sheep. You need to be a critic. You be a critic. Okay? Don't accept what everybody says. Don't accept what I say. All right. We out of here? Time we get out? See how far we got here. What's next? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I did this first out. All right, guys. We're looking at different forms of government. This stuff, guys, not rocket science. You haven't been exposed to it. You gotta pay attention here. Okay? All right. We'll look at different forms of government. We're going to start with monarchies. How do you become a monarch? You're born. Okay? Now, that's a true monarchy. Now, we still have about 40 monarchies in the world today. As far as true monarchies, where they have like a legitimate king that rules, has the power, there's only a few of those. Saudi Arabia being one of them. Kuwait being one of them. Some other Middle Eastern nations are true monarchies. Okay? You have a king or queen. Okay? Then you have what are called constitutional monarchies, and you might recognize this. UK. Okay? They have a king, right? King Charles III. Queen Elizabeth died, right? So now we have King Charles III. This is a constitutional monarch. So the Constitution gives somebody else the power besides the king and queen. So does King Charles have any real power? No, but it is still a monarch. Just like Japan still has an emperor, doesn't have any real power. Norway and Denmark both have kings, queens. Okay? They don't have any power, but they are the head of state. They're the ceremonial head of state. Okay? The British, why do they keep this? Why do they still have a king? Why do they have this royal family? Like, really, seriously, Harry and what's her name suck. What's her name? Meghan. I don't like her. And I don't like him because he listens to her. I think, listen, Harry served in Afghanistan. Okay, for the British Army. I respect that. Okay, he didn't have to. He's in the royal family. He didn't have to do that, but he did. And he served in infantry. He did, you know, they kept it all quiet, like who this guy was. I mean, they didn't talk about it. But he didn't, he wanted to serve. And I like that about it. Okay? His woman. Now, am I a big fan of Charles? No, that dude sucks. Now, I like William. Who's the heir? Yes, William's the heir to the throne. Okay? Needs to get a toupee or something, or just shave it. I don't know what's going on. You guys pay attention to the royal family? Okay. In England, they do. It's like the tabloids. They got to have something to write about. You guys ever heard of Princess Diana? Like, oh my God. Everybody loved Princess Diana. She was the best. She's the greatest ever. Like, I don't know if you knew that. She was like the greatest ever. Like Taylor Swift, the greatest ever. Okay. Guys, why do you, I mean, when you go to England for tourism, you want to go to Westminster Abbey, you want to see all the royal stuff and the guards out there with the funny hats. Tradition. It's just tradition. That's why they keep it around. Okay. They don't really have any power. Now the king of Saudi Arabia does. He's got all the power. He's a monarch. Okay. Now the power elsewhere in the government, Britain has a prime minister. They run the day-to-day affairs. So, guys, you got head of state, and then the prime minister, which is chief executive. President Biden is both. He is the ceremonial head of the United States. He's the president of the United States, and he's the chief executive. He's the head of the executive branch. He's both. Follow me? In these systems, which tend to be parliamentary, they're different. We have a presidential system. It's the same. Okay, I'll go back over that again. Okay, I'll explain that again. All right. Now, when you start looking at these, this is a dictatorship. This is not. This is a republic. That's what we're going to talk about next. Okay. All right. All right. Republics. Time we get out?
What, baby?
Okay. Guys, I said about 40 monarchs in the world. Most countries are republics. The United States is a republic. Okay? Government's authority comes from the people. This is the social contract that we talked about. We got these ideas from John Locke. Okay? That we will go into a contract, the people, to create a government. All right? They only get their authority from us. Now, this is made up of representatives elected by the people. So the democracy part is the electing, the voting. That's the democratic part. Okay? The term democracy means rule by the people. Okay, so I want to burst your bubble here a little bit. You can scour the Declaration of Independence. You can scour the U.S. Constitution. And nowhere in either one of those founding documents will you find the word democracy. It is not in there. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic with democratic values. Can you say we live in a representative democracy? Sure. But it actually makes more sense to call it a constitutional republic. Okay? With democratic values. Don't live in a democracy. If we did live in a democracy, it would look like this. What is a direct democracy? Yeah. Everybody votes on everything. Now, this morning, in speaking with my honors government, we talked about a third political philosopher named Jean-Jacques Rousseau. You guys have heard that term, or that guy Rousseau before. Now, Rousseau is important. Now, he writes in the 1700s instead of the 1600s, and he's from Switzerland, not from Britain. Rousseau talks about the social contract should be where people submit to the general will of the people. Listen to this terminology, guys. This is important. General will of the people. So the general will of this classroom would be what percent of this classroom? Majority, or 51%. Okay. Raise your hand in here if you were a conservative when we did the political spectrum. All right, look around. Look around. This is the majority. Okay? So the general will of this room is that we are going to take the moderates outside and we're going to beat them up until they become conservatives. That's the general will of the room. So if 51% agree to something, they can destroy the other 49%. This is Rousseau's message of direct democracy, where the people choose the decisions constantly. Now, we can do that in this country. We can make sure the government gives everybody one of these and gives them data. Every morning you wake up and there's a list of things to vote on. Should we bomb Iran for their attack on American troops this weekend? Who's voting? Let's go. Yes or no? Yes. Okay, keep your hands up. Should we nuke them? This is what I'm saying. This could become a problem. If you really anger the American people and they act irrationally, and 51% of the American people say, let's nuke them. Now we got a nuclear war. Because who's allied with Iran? Oh, do you know? Russia and China. But if you didn't know that, and you're like, the heck with it. Following me? Listen to my words, Cash.
Yep.
The founders of this country, oh, by the way, guys, Rousseau's theories helped lead to the French Revolution. Now, I want you guys to think about the French Revolution. I know you studied it as sophomores. In senior English, they used to read a book called A Tale of Two Cities. Anybody reading that? Gonna read that? What the hell is going on? The two cities are Paris and London. And it's a comparison of the American Revolution and the French Revolution. The American Revolution was inspired by Locke. He said, if the government doesn't secure your rights, you have the right to overthrow it. The British were violating the rights of the colonists. And they said, we have a right to abolish you in the name of God, that these are natural rights, and we can overthrow you and institute new government. The French Revolution was inspired by Rousseau and direct democracy. Does anybody remember anything about the French Revolution? Yeah.
Very bloody.
It was bloody. A lot of people lost their heads to the guillotine. What kind of people lost their heads? Anybody of power. Okay? Now, you guys remember in history class when I talked about the Bolsheviks?
Yeah.
The Bolsheviks are the majority of the people, the workers. They rise up against the powerful and bring them down. And who is the author of Bolshevism or communism? Karl Marx. Guess what? Karl Marx studied Rousseau. What our founders, they feared this, guys. Our founders were like, no, 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 no. They referred to democracy as this. Mobocracy. This is what the French Revolution was. It was the mob who was angry and irrational. And it turned bloody. Follow me? This is a terrible idea. So please tell me why our politicians, some of them, keep talking about our democracy. And our news organizations talking about our democracy. Our democracy is in jeopardy. What democracy? We don't live in a democracy. Excuse me. We live in a republic, and we elect people to make decisions for us. We don't live in a democracy. The illusion is that you have more say than you actually have. Your say is this: going to vote in November. That's your say. After we elect them, it's out of your hands. Now, can you write them emails, phone calls? Yeah. Can you protest? Yeah. Okay. But that's all the say you have, guys. It's in their hands now. City council, state legislature, U.S. Congress. President, governor, mayor. It's in their hands. Okay? And we don't want you to have that kind of power because you're ignorant and you're dangerous. especially out here in Kansas. You're a bunch of hayseeds and hicks that don't know how to read or write, but you like your guns and your Bible, okay? So you just stick with that and let us make the decisions. Am I pissing you off yet?
I thought it was funny.
That was not directed at anybody individually. But that's how the elites in this country view Kansas. Okay? So if you don't pay attention and you don't help make these decisions by electing people, then somebody else will make them for you. Okay? Somebody else will elect them. Okay? If you can keep it. Do you vote? Do you participate? Do you protest? Do you remind the government who's in charge? Remind the Congress people who's in charge. What time we get out? How are we behind in here? I got long-winded.
It's not our fault.
I know, it's all on me. This is going to get better. First hour doesn't talk either, so.